Hi, everybody. I'm Lisa Bloom.
I'm Sarah Bloom. Welcome to this week's Bloom Zoom, where we're going to be talking about 4 reasons why sexual harassment and assault victims don't report and how we still win their cases. So there are a lot of myths about sexual assault and sexual harassment victims, and defense attorneys often try to discredit victims by arguing that the abuse did not happen because the victim did not immediately report the crime. This is absolutely false and dangerous thinking. According to the EEOC, 90% of employees who experience harassment never file a formal complaint. And that's because there's a big difference between reporting sexual harassment and reporting something like a theft because of the stigma surrounding sex crimes and the psychological responses from victims.
So let's get to the reasons why victims don't report. Number one reason is the psychological responses. And we see this in so many of our cases. And we argue for our clients that this does not mean that it didn't happen. Number one, denial. So that's a very common psychological response. It's self-protective. We just don't want to think about a traumatic event. It takes the victim a while to process the trauma that happened. Shame and victim blaming is also very common, especially among women. Victims tend to blame themselves. Oh, I sent a friendly text afterwards, or I drank too much at the company party, so it's my fault. No, this goes back to antiquated beliefs about rape, like it's a victim's fault for wearing a mini skirt or she didn't fight back. And hopefully we're past all of that now. We know that physiologically, many victims actually freeze up when they're being assaulted, which prevents them from doing anything, let alone fighting back. So, of course, it is not the victim's fault. The victim always has the right to say no and not consent to any sexual act.
The second reason why victims don't report sexual harassment is often they have a close relationship with the abuser. In fact, 85% of sexual assault victims know their attackers. And experts say that when the victim knows the perpetrator, delayed reporting is the rule rather than the exception. And experts explain the victim's behavior when they know the harasser by a term called cognitive dissonance. And in these cases, victims remain friendly with the abuser and take longer to process the assault.
Most victims who know the accuser do reach out afterwards with friendly texts. This does not mean that you don't have a winnable case. The good news is that juries are now much more sophisticated and they understand these kinds of responses better because of the Me Too movement. Thank you, Me Too movement. When the abuser is known, it takes longer for the victim to process what happened. It doesn't make sense that this person that the victim knows as her boss or her coach, somebody that she even likes, that this person would sexually assault her. So it takes time for the victim to come to terms with this new reality.
The third reason why victims don't report is fear. So especially if the perpetrator is the victim's supervisor or someone with control over the victim's job, the person is scared to come forward and potentially lose their livelihood. And studies show that that fear is actually not unfounded. 75% of employees who complain about their sexual harassment experience retaliation in some form. And we've seen this in a lot of our cases. You know, the victim complains about harassment and then she's fired or demoted. And then we now have another claim for retaliation in addition to the sexual harassment.
Right. The fourth reason is normalized behavior. So we have many clients who work in companies that have a bro culture. Maybe it was started by some frat boys and that culture seeps into the office. Management will commonly make sexually offensive comments or circulate inappropriate material, and that kind of culture trickles down to other employees who then feel emboldened to harass others. In these types of workplaces, the perpetrator turns it all into a joke and makes the victim feel bad if she's offended, or maybe you're just a snowflake and you should just get over it. And I can tell you, by the way, that this is very common, like in the brokerage industry, in the restaurant industry, where this behavior is normalized. It is not a defense to sexual harassment that everybody in this industry does it. You will read the sexual harassment laws in vain trying to find that as a defense. It just does not exist. Also, many victims are young and maybe it's her first job or her only job. And she thinks that this behavior is normal and it's part of every workplace. It is not.
Okay, so now that we just went through the top 4 reasons why victims don't report, let's talk now about how we still win their cases. So first, as you can see, we spend a lot of time looking at the psychological research, and we argue effectively in briefs and at trial these exact points, that it is normal for victims to not report sexual harassment to the police or to their employer. And we use this research and sometimes hire experienced and qualified experts to explain this to the judge, to the jury, and to mediators.
And even if the victim didn't report right away or sent some friendly texts, we can use other evidence to show that these incidents still happened. We can use texts with the perpetrator, emails, journal entries. Maybe the victim told her therapist or friends or family members. That is evidence. They can be witnesses, and that can corroborate claims. Complaints from other women can also be used as evidence. This is one of my personal favorites because I love when victims stand with other victims. So for example, last year, Sarah, you and I did the trial of Chastity Jones, her sexual harassment case. And she never complained to Human Resources about the sexual harassment that she experienced, but she was able to use the complaint of another accuser, another brave client of ours, Elizabeth Taylor, to show that the company should have done more to prevent the sexual harassment. And at that case, we ended up winning one of the biggest jury verdicts of the year, an $11 million verdict. So one of the most common things we hear is that nobody else was in the room during the assault, and so I don't have any evidence, but I want you all to know that your testimony is evidence.
In conclusion, if you think you have been a victim of sexual harassment, know that you are not alone. We encourage you to contact an attorney immediately about your case, as the law has very specific and short time limits to file. Most attorneys, including us, will do a free and confidential consultation so you can better understand your rights.
And we are very proud to fight for our sexual harassment and discrimination clients every day. We would be very happy to review your case. If you want to contact us, it's very easy. Just go to our website, thebloomfirm.com, and click on the contact page. We're happy to give you a free and confidential consultation about your case. Until next time, stay strong and stay safe, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.